So maybe this slide surprises some people. I think when we hear conflict of interest, especially in our country, especially in our culture, thinking about like our political climate and our news climate over the past few years, I think we're like, oh gosh, conflicts of interest. Like we want nothing to do with that. But I think we need to remember conflicts of interest are not necessarily bad, right? Like just because a conflict of interest exists doesn't mean it's going to result in some sort of poor outcome. Just because a conflict of interest exists doesn't mean that it shouldn't exist, right? We must have industry and providers working together, or else we're not going to have COVID vaccines that come to fruition that quickly, right? We're not going to have new cancer treatments. We're not going to have new drugs. There is a benefit when patients, healthcare organizations, and providers work with industry and others in healthcare to develop new treatments, to develop new ways of looking at each other, or excuse me, at issues, at diagnoses. We become better with each other. However, there are risks, right? You don't want those relationships that need to exist for the sake of humanity and for the sake of progress in healthcare to call into question professional judgment or to create bias. Like we've talked about, we are human. There are biases that we have that we don't even know. Like I can't imagine if we could, I'm not a psychology major, Giovanni, I don't know if you have that background or not, but like there's entire fields of study around this, right? Like we can't help it. So what we want to do again is just put guardrails in to help, essentially help our physicians, help our staff, help our leaders know what the lines are, create those guardrails so that they don't go outside of the lines even when they don't need to. But just remember, just because it's a conflict of interest isn't bad. Certainly the term has a super bad rap, but I don't think it needs to. Really, the goal of COI management is just putting in guardrails that help protect reputation, right? Help protect the integrity of professional judgment. Make sure that patients don't call into question, like, you're a researcher for this drug company and then you prescribed a drug from that company. Did I really need that? Or were you doing that because you had a financial relationship, right? We don't want our patients to think that. So when everything is very transparent, when everything is very upfront, like Giovanni said, when you go beyond the checklist and you go into conversations and evaluation and really thinking through things, that's the goal of COI management, right? So just remember, it's not all bad. Like it's actually really good. We will have better organizations, better providers when our providers are doing interesting things like research and consulting sometimes, depending on what kind it is, right? And publishing, those are all really good things. It's just that we want to create guardrails so that those have a less of a chance of impacting our judgment.
Yeah, I think that point about this is about conflict of interest management, not immediately rip out anything that might be a conflict of interest. And I think that's why you need a thoughtful, well-managed program, because there's a bunch of things in the gray area that are not the obvious malfeasance, but okay, well, this is fine, let's disclose it. Or okay, let's keep an eye on this and see if it progresses, or we get deeper in with this vendor or whatever it might be. And, if you're in finance, if you're in technology, if you're in hospitality, these types of things, the business consideration, you have relationships across the industry, you used to work somewhere else or wherever it is, it's present. And I think if we raise our awareness that these conflicts of interest are present, they don't all need to go away. You don't need to fire everybody who has one, but when you know about it, you're aware and you can make a measured response of, okay, we need to separate from this relationship and we need to manage this differently. And that's part of why this process gets so complex. That's part of why you need a strong program so you can manage through the volume of potential issues.